Before I get started with this video, you should know that supernatural and paranormal sort of mean two different things, but to some are used interchangeably. As a general rule, paranormal is relating to ghosts, poltergeists and hauntings, whereas alien abductions and alien technology is classed as supernatural. Now again, both terms are used in the same context, but you get the idea. Supernatural and paranormal are both used to describe things that fall outside of our normal explanations. Well, you might be surprised then by the amount of deaths out there where it's incredibly hard to dismiss either of these two as being responsible. So, from a perfectly healthy man who met a witch and was dead within a week after she put a spell on him, to one of the most insane possible alien mutilation cases you will ever hear about. Here are 5 unsolved deaths that seem very much related to supernatural and paranormal events. This is one of my deepest videos to date, so get comfy and enjoy. Ziggmund Adamsky. Ziggmund Adamsky was a Polish man who moved to Britain with his wife in 1960. The couple settled in Tingley, Yorkshire, and Adamsky found a job as a miner at Loft House Colliery. Fast forward 20 years to 1980, and Adamsky left his house to do some shopping but never returned. His disappearance was totally out of character and baffled his friends and family. 5 days later, his body was discovered by a policeman in a coal yard in Todmorden, 20 miles from his home. He was lying on a pile of coal, still wearing his suit and tie but no shirt, and his watch and wallet were missing. He also had mysterious burns on the back of his head, shoulders and neck, and there was some evidence that these had been treated with an unknown ointment. At the inquest into his death, it was revealed that although Adamsky had been missing for 5 days, he had not been dead for that long. He was well nourished, did not appear to have been beaten up, and only had 1 day's worth of beard growth. It was estimated Adamsky had only been on that pile of coal for a few hours. It was officially concluded the cause of his death was a heart attack, although it was thought he was held somewhere prior to his death. Where this place was, however, has never been established. But the mystery deepens. 6 months after Adamsky's death, Alan Godfrey, the policeman who had originally found him, spotted a UFO in the same area and claimed he was abducted by aliens. This claim led people to think Adamsky's death could have also been linked to an alien abduction. After all, there was speculation that his body had been dropped from above due to the position he was found on the coal heap. And there was also the question of where he had been for 5 days, along with the unfamiliar ointment on his body. So was he abducted by aliens, tested on and then dumped? That area is one of Britain's biggest UFO hotspots, so it makes you wonder. There are of course other theories, as it was later revealed that there was a family feud going on, and maybe that had something to do with it, but nothing really adds up. What do you think happened? Christopher Case. The 1991 death of Christopher Case is a truly mysterious one that will seriously get you thinking. Christopher was a 35-year-old producer and programmer who created elevator music. He was healthy, had friends, and showed no signs of any problems. Whilst on a business trip to San Francisco, he was introduced to a lady who had access to ancient Egyptian music. Being a producer, he was keen to chat with anyone with similar interests, but this woman was different. During their first meet, they got along well, but when they decided to meet for dinner, she showed clear signs that she wanted to get with him. Christopher was not interested, and she became frustrated, telling him that she was a witch and that he would be sorry as she was putting a curse on him. When he returned home to Seattle, he phoned a female friend and told her about what had happened, just out of conversation. But as the days went by, he progressively got stranger, and the phone calls to his friend got more concerning. Just a few days after meeting the witch, his friends were unable to get in touch with him. It turns out he was so scared in his own home that he had checked into a hotel room. Over the next few days, he continued to phone his friend and tell her that he was terrified and was convinced he was cursed. In the days before his death, he had contacted his female friend claiming he was being mentally attacked at night by this witch, and he had woken up with tiny cuts on the ends of his fingers. He also told her that he could die from this. When he did not answer a call from his friend the next day, she phoned the police, who went around to his apartment to check on him, but he did not answer. It turns out he had been to visit a priest that day in desperation for his life. Shortly after, Christopher phoned his friend for the final time. She did not answer, and he left an unusually calm, haunting voicemail, saying that they are trying to kill him and that he wasn't looking forward to the night. The next day, the police officers returned, and this time the house was unlocked. When they entered the apartment, they were confronted with a bizarre scene. Around 10 burnt-out candles were discovered scattered around the place, and lines of salt had been poured along the bases of the walls. There were also several crucifixes and a few books on how to prevent curses. In the bathroom, Mr. Case was found fully clothed in an empty bath in a praying position. Police were baffled, there was no sign of a struggle or violence, and foul play was not suspected. At the inquest into his death, it was confirmed Mr. Case was a clean-living and stable man, who never had any interest in witchcraft, and his death was a result of cardiac arrest. 35-year-old Christopher had become convinced that he had been cursed. So was he actually, and did this kill him? Or, like some have suggested, was he so convinced that he was, that he literally scared himself to death? I just want to know if the witch was ever contacted, because it seems if he had never met her, he would still be alive. Carl Pruitt's cursed grave. This next one is pretty old, but worth a mention as it's incredibly strange. Now, there are some aspects of it that sound hard to believe, but it's claimed to be a true story. It all started in 1938 in Pulaski County, Kentucky, when Carl Pruitt returned home after a day's work and found his wife in bed with another man. In a fit of rage, he grabbed a chain and strangled her, and the other man ran away. Realizing what he had done, Pruitt then committed suicide. Carl and his wife were buried in different cemeteries in different towns at the request of her family. But over time, visitors to the cemetery where Carl was buried began noticing something strange about his grave. It appeared to have discoloured circle marks on it that seemed to link up, giving it the appearance of a chain hanging on the tombstone. The phenomenon started to attract attention from locals, one of which was a young boy called James Collins, who visited with his friends and started to throw stones at the grave. As he rode home from the cemetery that day, he apparently had an incident and the chain from his bike came off, wrapped around his neck and strangled him. His devastated mother was convinced her son's death had something to do with the grave, so smashed it to pieces with an axe. The next day, Mrs. Collins was hanging out the washing when the clothesline got tangled around her neck and strangled her. Pruitt's grave, which she had apparently smashed up, was still intact. The next victim was a farmer who was riding past the cemetery with his family in a horse-drawn carriage. Aware of the now infamous grave, he decided to take a shot at it with his pistol. The noise spooked the horses who bolted. His family managed to jump clear, but the farmer was thrown from the carriage and the horse's reins caught around his neck and strangled him. Next was two police officers who went to the grave to take pictures. As they drove from the cemetery, a bright light was following them. They sped up and crashed their car. One officer was killed and the other, who survived, said his partner's head was practically decapitated by a fence. After these terrible events, people stayed away from the grave, convinced it was cursed. However, one man decided to smash the tombstone with a hammer. Just after, the man was found dead at the gates of the cemetery, with the chain of the gate's lock wrapped around his neck. This was the final straw. Authorities are said to have exhumed all of the bodies from the cemetery and moved them to other sites, including Pruitt and his tombstone. Where this is exactly has never been disclosed. You're probably thinking there is no way all of that can be true, but it seems there is a lot of information on it and I can't find anywhere that says it's a hoax or an urban legend. Now, that doesn't mean it hasn't been exaggerated over the years, but there is no doubt Carl Pruitt existed and there were some strange things going on to do with his gravestone. The Jameson family. The mystery deaths of the Jameson family is one of the strangest unsolved cases out there. It began in 2009 when Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson, along with their 6-year-old daughter Madeline, drove to the Red Oak Mountain area of Oklahoma, just a few miles from their home, to look for some land they were planning on purchasing. 8 days later, their family reported them missing and their abandoned locked truck was found on a single dirt road heading down to the Red Oak Mountain. There was no sign of a crash, and inside the car were their wallets, IDs, mobile phones, $32,000 in cash, a GPS, and Maisie the family dog, who was starving but luckily survived. Despite extensive searches, the bodies of the family were not found for another 4 years, when in November 2013, their skeletal remains were located face down, side by side in the woods, just a short distance from where their vehicle was left. It took nearly another year to identify them as the Jamesons, and the cause of their death could not be determined. When further research was done, many mysterious things started to emerge. Firstly, police found CCTV footage of Bobby and Sherilyn packing their car just before the trip, and they were acting very strange. Psychologists who have analysed it said Bobby and Sherilyn took over 20 trips each to the house and back to the car, and were loading and reloading the same items over and over in what seems to be in a trance-like state. They also changed clothes more than once during their packing and loaded a brown bag into the truck, which was not found when the vehicle was discovered on the dirt road and has never been recovered. Speaking of things in their truck, police were able to use their phone to track their location that day, and it was concluded they had stopped further up the road prior to leaving their truck and walked around for a while. They had also taken this picture of 6-year-old Madison, which has added all kinds of speculation to the case. Then there is the mystery of why police search dogs took them to a nearby water tank during their investigation. This tank was drained and nothing was found, but why the dogs were getting such a strong scent there is unknown. So what happened to the Jameson family? There have been tons of theories over the years, some believing it was a murder-suicide as both Bobby and Sherilyn suffered from depression and a pistol they owned is missing, but this wasn't found at the site their remains were, so this seems an unrealistic theory. Drugs have also been suggested, but again, nothing was found in their car or home to suggest this. Others say whilst looking for land to buy, they went out for a hike and ran into the wrong people. But due to Bobby's severe back pain, and the fact they probably wouldn't have left the dog locked inside the car if they were hiking, and that there was no DNA or evidence suggesting it was a murder, this theory has been proven unlikely. However, one of the most intriguing stories behind their deaths involves witchcraft, cults, and evil spirits. The family pastor told investigators that before their disappearance, the family had been involved in spiritual warfare, claiming they were being plagued by ghosts in their house, and were convinced their daughter was talking to the spirit of a child who had died there many years previously. Friends and family also reported that they had strange, eerie feelings whilst there, and the pastor confirmed Bobby had consulted a satanic Bible in a bid to exorcise the property as he could see ghosts on the roof. Sherilyn also studied witchcraft and would leave notes around the house saying things like, "Get out Satan." Now, how we can link this to their deaths, I don't know, but some believe it could have something to do with it. Since many of the people questioned during the initial investigation, along with the sheriff in charge, have either moved away or refused to discuss the case, we may not ever find out what really happened to the Jamesons, but it's certainly one of the strangest cases I have ever heard about. There is simply no evidence to suggest they were killed by someone or something, and no evidence that they had committed suicide. Add that strange CCTV footage in, and all the other mysterious circumstances, and all we are left with is speculation. What's your theories? Alien mutilation. This is possibly the most horrific case I've ever researched, so disturbing it seems inconceivable that a human being could do this to someone, leading many to believe that maybe a human wasn't responsible. In 1994, the body of a man was found in the Guaraparinga Reservoir near the city of São Paulo in Brazil, and at first glance it was obvious that this was no ordinary death. The man had been strategically mutilated in the most horrific way. His organs had been removed, and the official cause of death was a heart attack, likely caused by the immense pain he had endured. Whoever inflicted this mutilation knew exactly what they were doing. The following was missing from his body: his left eye, his left ear, his lips, tongue, and jawbone. From his upper torso, 2 holes were pierced in his chest, and his body was drained of every drop of blood. From his lower body, his rectum had been carved out, with his stomach, pelvic cavity, and groin area removed. The entire body had strategically positioned holes in it, used to extract internal organs with what's believed to have been some sort of sucking device. It's thought the man would have still been alive during these procedures, although strangely, the autopsy report states that there was no sign of a struggle and no use of any restraints. The case received little publicity at the time, but 4 years after the incident, 2 Brazilian researchers revealed for the first time details of the death, along with some very disturbing photographs of the man's injuries. So if as thought humans were not responsible, then who was? The theory is this could have only been performed by a super intelligent extraterrestrial life, who were doing their own specific research on the human body. It may sound insane for some, but you can see why people think that, as the only other theory is that this was done by a human who had the precise medical knowledge and motive to carry this sort of thing out. What do you think? So that's 5 deaths that seem very closely linked to paranormal or supernatural events. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you next week for another video.